The Great Salt Lake in Utah is releasing extremely toxic dust that affects more than 2 million people living nearby. But a new discovery might end this problem. Scientists found a layer of water underneath it that is not salty, and this underground reservoir could be even bigger than the lake itself. So, Utah's Great Salt Lake has been in trouble for years. The water that should be flowing into the lake is being used for cities and farms. Because of that, the water level has dropped by about 22 feet since 1986, and some people believe the lake could vanish in just 5 years. The problem is that, as it shrinks, it leaves behind huge areas of dry lakebed. This mix of mud and dust contains toxic things like arsenic, mercury, and lead. So, when the wind blows, this toxic dust can reach nearby cities, and as people breathe it in, they might develop serious health problems. Scientists think this dust is part of the reason why about 1 in 10 people living in Utah deal with respiratory issues. But then, something strange started happening. Scientists noted a bunch of tall wetland grasses growing in the lake's southeast corner. These plants are called phragmites, and they usually need a lot of fresh water to survive. That's when scientists realized the water might be coming from underground, from beneath the dry lake bed itself. Scientists then decided to use electromagnetic pulses to scan long sections of the lake bed and find out if this hidden reservoir was real. And what they discovered was huge. The scans showed a layer of fresh water in the sediment beneath the lake, starting around 330 feet down and reaching as deep as 2.5 miles. They also believe there's a layer of rock acting like a barrier down there, preventing the fresh water from mixing with the lake's salty water. Now, so far, the study can't say for sure how big this reservoir really is. But if it stretches under a much larger part of the lake, it could help solve the toxic dust problem. The idea is that the water could be used to wet the dry lake bed and keep the dust from blowing into the air. Now that would be great. But even if the plan doesn't work, this discovery still matters. In the end, it gives us a new way to search for hidden freshwater. As droughts get worse and water becomes harder to find, studies like this could help us find new underground reservoirs, not just in Utah, but maybe in other deserts around the world.
In 1960, you could fish here. Today, the boats sit on sand more than 60 miles away from the water. The Aral Sea has dried up, and it wasn't an accident. Summer 2026 is likely to bring 10 to 12 massive toxic dust storms from the Aral Sea, potentially the worst storm season ever recorded, and it might affect millions of people living in the region. The Aral Sea used to be the 4th largest lake on Earth. Today, most of it is just gone. The Aral Sea sits between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, and despite its name, it was actually a giant lake with no connection to the ocean. 2 big rivers, the Amu Darya and the Sir Darya, had been feeding it for many thousands of years. Until the 1960s, when people started taking large amounts of river water to grow crops in the desert, especially cotton. Massive canals redirected the rivers, and all that water didn't have time to reach the lake. The Aral Sea started shrinking fast. The less water reached the lake, the farther the shoreline moved away. Fishing towns ended up miles from the water, and boats were stranded in dry sand. In about 60 years, the Aral Sea lost about 90% of its original size. But that wasn't even the main problem. The exposed lakebed turned into a new desert called the Arakum Desert. These days, it covers about 24,000 square miles. that's roughly the size of West Virginia. Winds sweep across the dry ground and pick up dust and sand. Those dust storms carry salt, chemicals, and polluted dirt into nearby towns and farms. Air quality got worse, crops stopped growing, and people started dealing with serious health problems. Now people are trying to slow down this disaster. One idea is to plant black saxaul shrubs across the dry lakebed. Those desert plants help hold the soil in place so the wind can't carry it away as easily. Sadly, it won't bring the Aral Sea back. But it may stop the region from getting even worse. New satellite images from the European Space Agency show how extreme the damage has become. Right in the middle of the landscape, there's a giant empty space where the lake used to be. Images from March 2025 reveal that the western side of the lake has shrunk a lot, and the eastern side has disappeared almost completely. Just one small part of the lake is still trying to survive. It's the small Aral Sea in Kazakhstan. In winter, parts of it even freeze over, and while the southern section might disappear soon, the small Aral can still be saved. One of the biggest projects is the Kokaral Dam. In satellite images, it looks like two long brown lines near the southeastern edge of the small Aral Sea. The dam was finished in 2005, and its job is simple: to stop water from flowing south and keep it in the northern section. Surprisingly, this plan worked better than anyone expected. Since they finished the dam, water levels in the Aral Sea have risen by about 13 feet. Salinity dropped too. The fish populations started recovering. A few fishing communities have come back to life. It's still far from the massive lake it used to be. The Aral Sea disaster is one of the worst environmental catastrophes on Earth. South of the lake, the historical Khwarazm region suffered a lot. It used to be a thriving region with farms, wetlands, rivers, forests, and fishing communities. Now, large parts of it look almost post-apocalyptic. When toxic dust reached towns and farms and contaminated drinking water supplies, the region fell into crisis. Many farms were destroyed because crops couldn't grow in poisoned soil. Tens of thousands of people lost their main source of income. Clean drinking water became hard to find, and diseases started spreading more often, especially respiratory illnesses and anemia. Lakes dried out, marshes disappeared, and rivers shrank. Forests turned into dry wasteland, and it happened very fast. In just a few decades, we managed to almost wipe out one of the world's largest lakes and completely ruin the climate, economy, and health of a large region. People are now trying to save what's left. There are large economic projects, foreign investments, and even plans connected to artificial intelligence and tech companies. For example, there's a plan to build computing centers and data hubs for AI-related businesses. But it's difficult to imagine right now. The region is still dealing with water shortages and pollution. At the same time, some projects sound much more realistic. For example, there's a United Nations program that helps farmers grow new types of rice that use far less water, up to 40% less than traditional rice farming. Interestingly, not everything in this disaster looks the same everywhere. Most reports zoom in on the areas that sit right next to the dried-up Aral Sea. They get hit the hardest when toxic dust storms blow off the exposed lakebed. But a bit farther south and east, in places like Dashoguz in Turkmenistan and Khwarazm in Uzbekistan, things don't look quite as bad. Part of the reason is that those areas are farther upstream, closer to where the rivers flow in. Satellite images show fewer abandoned fields there. Still, it doesn't mean those regions are safe. Dust storms, water shortages, and environmental problems still affect the entire area. Recently, giant storms have hit Karakalpakstan, Khwarazm, and Dashoguz at the same time. And the struggle is far from over. The North Aral Sea in Kazakhstan, the part that made a partial comeback thanks to the Kokarel Dam, is now under pressure again. The water coming in through the Sirdarya River might get too weak to fight off the intense summer evaporation. Water levels could seriously drop during summer 2026. If that happens, the water will get saltier again, and fish populations will take another hit. Sadly, the Aral Sea disaster isn't unique. Many other lakes and reservoirs all over the world suffer from overuse and bad water management. Take Lake Chad in Africa. Back in the 1960s, it was one of the largest lakes on the continent. Today, around 90% of it is gone. That's what years of drought, rising temperatures, and heavy water use for farming did to the once magnificent lake. Even worse, as the water disappeared, millions of people lost fishing jobs, farmland, and drinking water. It led to the shortage of food and diseases. Many people had to move. Now look at the United States. Lake Mead, the giant reservoir behind Hoover Dam near Nevada and Arizona, has been shrinking for years. All because of a massive long-term drought and huge demand on the Colorado River. Sometimes the water got so low that people started worrying about losing the electricity from the dam, and even whether big cities would still have enough water. Unlike some other places, parts of the American Southwest reacted fast, like Las Vegas. The city kept growing really fast, but somehow it still cut water use per person almost in half since the early 2000s. One big reason? People replaced huge lawns and decorative grass with desert plants that needed way less water. The city also built special deep water intake tunnels. This way, it could still pull water from Lake Mead even if the reservoir dropped to dangerously low levels. Then there's California's Salton Sea. Its story sounds disturbingly close to the Aral Sea disaster. The Salton Sea is a giant inland lake in Southern California. For decades, water flowing off farms fed it, but then the water level dropped and huge parts of the lakebed dried out, exposing toxic ground underneath. Now winds blow dust filled with heavy metals and chemicals into nearby towns, causing heart and lung diseases. In some towns, people literally breathe toxic dust from the dried out lakebed. California has already launched a large cleanup and dust control project. Those include wetlands and soil stabilization programs. But many experts say it might already be too late.
Utah is turning into a desert, and it's happening way faster than anyone thought. In just a few decades, the state's most famous lake could dry up completely. And when that happens, huge clouds of toxic dust could cover entire cities, forcing millions of people to leave their homes for good. So, what is really going on? Utah is a western state in the US, and locals like to joke that it's already pretty much one big desert. And honestly, they're not that wrong. Most of the state is scorching hot and dry. In fact, Utah won the title of the second driest state in the entire country. But that only feels like a win if you actually enjoy temperatures of 101 degrees Fahrenheit. But when I say desert, don't picture endless sand dunes like the Sahara. Utah's deserts are more about canyons, rocky landscapes, and very scarce vegetation. And if you look at the state from above, a huge body of water immediately stands out. That's the Great Salt Lake, the largest saltwater lake in the entire Western Hemisphere. But soon, it might not even be a lake at all. Yep, this whole region is turning into a desert, no exception. That's a big deal because the Great Salt Lake isn't just any lake, it's essential for them. And there are three big reasons why. First, there's the cultural side. Long before any major cities ever showed up, it was already a place of deep spiritual meaning for indigenous tribes in Utah. Then there's the wildlife. This region is a crucial stop along the migration routes of about 10 million birds. including eared grebes and American avocets. For them, it's a place to feed, nest, and rest before continuing their journey. And finally, there's the economy. The Great Salt Lake is worth big money, bringing in about $1.3 billion a year for Utah. But its reach goes far beyond the United States and supports industries all over the world. This place is packed with brine shrimp, also known as sea monkeys. These tiny crustaceans are very important since they feed fish farms in dozens of countries. Believe it or not, almost half of the world's brine shrimp supply comes from the Great Salt Lake. But it's not just about these little creatures. This region also gives us magnesium, sea salt, and other minerals that keep Utah's economy running. It's such an important spot that it provides jobs for about 9,000 people. Now that you know how essential the Great Salt Lake is, here's the hard truth. It's drying up, fast. And there are two big culprits: the weather and, well, us. You see, the lake's been feeding the effects of shifting weather patterns. For a while now, more of the region's precipitation has been falling as rain instead of snow. And that's bad news. Snow is better for the lake because it piles up in the mountains and melts slowly, feeding the lake over time. But now, with less snow and more rain, the lake isn't getting refilled like it used to. And then there's the human factor. Starting back in the early 1900s, authorities began building dams, canals, and pipelines around the lake. The idea was simple: divert the lake's water to farms, factories, and the fast-growing towns nearby. People along the Wasatch Front have been actively diverting water from the lake for over a century. But in the last few decades, things have really ramped up. Think about it. Back in 1982, the Salt Lake City area had around 700,000 people. Fast forward to 2025 and it's about 1.2 million. That's a lot more showers, crops, and industry all pulling water away from the lake. And that brings us to where things stand today. Parts of the Great Salt Lake are now only about 40% full by volume. Sure, the water levels rise and fall from year to year, but overall, they've been dropping for decades. Back in the 1980s, the Great Salt Lake stretched over more than 3,000 square miles. By 2021, it barely covered 950 square miles. At this rate, the lake could disappear completely within just a few years. Pretty terrifying, huh? And the danger isn't just about the cultural history that could disappear, the millions of birds that could be lost, or Utah's economy taking a massive hit. The air itself could become harmful, turning this whole region into a dangerous place to live. Turns out, the sediments at the bottom of the Great Salt Lake are packed with materials that show high reactivity. In simple terms, stuff that could be bad, even toxic for us. When the lake shrinks, the exposed lakebed dries out and turns to dust, and that dust doesn't just stay put. It gets picked up by the wind and blown straight into the air. The problem is that the lake is pretty close to big cities, and the dust that could come from it might carry metals like manganese, iron, copper, and lead, all of which can seriously irritate your lungs. When that happens, it can trigger inflammation and lead to respiratory issues. Experts believe it might also be connected to heart problems, developmental defects, and other serious health risks. These findings were published in 2024. At the time, scientists admitted they couldn't yet confirm whether those toxic substances were reaching populated areas. They still needed better equipment to track the wind and all. Even so, people were already worried. Then, in May of 2025, the headlines hit. A dust storm carrying toxic elements had, in fact, swept across the Salt Lake Valley, impacting residents in some of Utah's most densely populated areas. People in Magna and Tooele County actually watched a massive plume of dust roll right over their cities. So yeah, even though we still need more studies to know just how bad things could get, or if the biggest cities will be hit, groups like the nonprofit Grow the Flow say the disaster is already underway. They report that dust storms from more than 1,000 square miles of exposed lakebed are already drifting into nearby communities, affecting the air people are breathing right now. This is just one reason why the situation is becoming such a big crisis, and why the authorities are so concerned. But it's not like there's nothing that can be done. People in Utah are already taking steps to turn things around, or at least keeping it from getting any worse. Over the past few years, Utah's authorities have made getting water back to the Great Salt Lake a top priority. They've done it by creating special policies for farmers and setting up new tools to track water flows, for example. They believe those efforts are starting to pay off. The lake hit a historic low in 2022, but the winters of 2023 and 2024 brought above-average snowfall. When that snow melted, the water ran into rivers and helped the lake rise a little. That's good news, but not great. I mean, the lake is still several feet below what's considered an ecologically healthy level. So, they had to come up with more ambitious plans. And recently, almost 23 billion gallons of water were sent from Utah Lake to the Great Salt Lake through the Jordan River. To put that into perspective, that's roughly 750 Olympic-sized swimming pools. It's enough water to supply about 3,000 homes for a year. The good news is that most of Utah's lake water comes from snowpack melt. And not long ago, it was nearly 96% full. So this plan is a real win-win. It helps keep the Great Salt Lake at a healthier level, and it also helps prevent flooding at Utah Lake. This is probably just the start. Over the next few months, the Great Salt Lake could get another boost from more controlled water releases across its basin. Of course, this problem is far from over, but every drop of water helps. If these efforts keep going, Utah might actually have a fighting chance to save this precious lake and keep the area from possibly turning into a desert.
Lake Michigan is one of the largest and most mysterious freshwater lakes in the United States. And now, deep inside it, scientists have stumbled upon something unexplainable. Vast, round craters scattered all across the lake's floor. It all started in 2022. A team of researchers wanted to map the lake's bottom and look for some shipwrecks. At first, they were sure it's going to be just some typical rocky terrain or sandy patches. But what they saw on their sonar screens stopped them cold. Strange, circular shapes that looked almost too perfect to be natural. They were hiding about 500 feet beneath the surface, in places where the water turns dark and impenetrable. Those guys are huge, ranging from 300 to 600 feet wide. They also plunge nearly 40 feet deep. And there are dozens of them, neatly arranged like some footprints. But the team had no idea what these things were. Then, in August 2024, the mystery only deepened. Using a remotely operated vehicle, they got a closer look at these formations. There were about 40 of them. No one had ever seen anything quite like this before in the Great Lakes. What could have created those craters? Could they be ancient? Perhaps remnants of some geological event lost to time? If that's the case, it's weird how long these holes have likely been sitting there, undisturbed. Theories started popping up. One possibility was that they could be sinkholes, or dolines. Those are basically holes that suddenly appear in the ground when the surface layer collapses. The rock beneath the surface, often made of limestone, gets slowly dissolved by water over time, creating voids underground. When the surface of those voids can no longer hold its own weight, it caves in, and this forms a hole. Think of it like when you poke a straw through the lid of a drink. Sinkholes can be small dips or huge, spanning up to 2,000 feet. They can happen gradually or all at once. Sometimes they can swallow entire cars or even buildings. And Lake Michigan sits on limestone bedrock. It erodes pretty easily when water flows through it. Sinkholes like these have already been found in Lake Huron, and they look kinda similar. But there are some plot holes, no pun intended, with this theory. For example,
It's wild how they all would be so huge. It's also weird and pretty rare for sinkholes to occur in a lakebed. They also kind of resemble a straight pattern. They seem to extend generally southward, forming a loose line, which is pretty weird. If these are sinkholes, then they're definitely not playing the usual geological rules. Though it might be some new, unusual process at play beneath the lake's surface that we haven't discovered yet. There's another theory though. Glaciers. Glaciers are wild rivers of ice. They covered much of the Earth during the last ice age, and they're incredibly powerful. While they might move slowly, sometimes only a few inches per day, they have such immense weight that they can reshape entire landscapes over thousands of years. Glaciers can grind and scoop the land beneath them. They're basically like colossal bulldozers. Their weight, combined with the slow but steady movement, grounds down everything beneath them: rocks, soil, even bedrock. This can create deep gouges in the Earth's surface, called glacial troughs. During the last ice age, there were lots of glaciers all over the northern US, including the Great Lakes region. If they moved across what is now Lake Michigan, they could have carved out these deep holes. Glaciers often move in a pretty straight path. As they move, they cause terrain to erode, but the resulting erosion varies based on terrain. Sometimes there are places where the bedrock is softer or fractured, and these places are more easily carved and crushed by the glacier. That could explain why some holes could be bigger and deeper than others. Harder bedrock is less affected. But usually this leads to rounded, crescent-shaped depressions known as chatter marks. Those marks are more like grooves rather than circular, big craters like those in Lake Michigan. Once the glaciers melted, the Great Lakes themselves formed. If the craters were formed by them, they may have filled with water, becoming part of the Michigan Lake. Though this theory is more like a speculation, so we need more evidence. But there's another layer to this mystery. The craters are not just curious geological formations. They actually may hold valuable clues about early life on Earth. Parts of Lake Michigan, especially dark ones, are relatively low in oxygen. It's like a lighter version of deep ocean environments that often have very little of this element. For example, hydrothermal vents deep in the ocean, underwater openings in the Earth's crust with some hot, mineral-rich water that are often very low in oxygen. But some organisms love places like these. For example, opossum shrimp. Teeny tiny shrimp-like creatures that love cold, deep waters. They get their name because they have a pouch to carry their young until they're ready to be on their own, like an opossum. Or deep-water sculpin fish. Small bottom-dwelling fish that also enjoys cold lakes. They're well adapted to living in dark waters and usually stay close to the lakebed. And weird organisms like invasive quagga mussels, which kinda look like shells. These are small freshwater mussels that have spread there to the Great Lakes. They attach themselves to hard surfaces and can cause problems for ecosystems by competing with native species for food and space. All these guys could be in Lake Michigan, and even more. There might be microbes or even bacteria that are specially adapted to these harsh conditions, just like it was in Lake Huron. There's only a handful of creatures that could survive deep within these craters, and studying them could give us insight into how life once flourished in Earth's ancient, oxygen-poor oceans. That's because it's in places similar to these, where some of the earliest life forms thrived. Early Earth had an atmosphere with little oxygen, although it was much more hot, and ancient microbes adapted to this. The Great Lakes, especially Lake Michigan, have always had a bit of a ghostly reputation. Like even this mission was organized to study the shipwrecks. There were about 6,000 of them in the Great Lakes. Many of these wrecks are still sitting on the lake beds, preserved by the cold, fresh waters. And shipwrecks aren't the only strange things tied to the Great Lakes. Over the years, there have been stories of unexplained disappearances.
boats, and even planes have vanished without a trace. The lakes, often calm on the surface, can suddenly turn dangerous with unpredictable storms and massive waves, leading to these mysterious events. Not even mentioning all the creepy stuff people noticed there over the centuries, such as ghostly lights above water or bizarre weather patterns like eerie, sudden fogs that seem to appear out of nowhere. In 2007, they even discovered some prehistoric structure that looks like Stonehenge there. Well, it was way smaller, but still. It lay about 40 feet below the surface in the heart of Grand Traverse Bay, and it's speculated to be about 9,000 years old, way older than Stonehenge. Looks like this is a print of those who lived in the area thousands of years ago. These massive stones are arranged in a careful, winding pattern stretching over a mile. They range in size from basketballs to compact cars. But one, in particular, stands out. A boulder 3.5 to 4 feet tall, 5 feet wide. It's etched with the image of a mastodon, a creature that roamed the earth about 11,000 years ago before it went extinct. It probably sank there during the end of the last ice age we mentioned. This period had reshaped the region. This place is underwater now, but back in the day, it was still dry land. So the stones were probably created by people who lived there, though we're not sure why. Were they used as hunting blinds? Or was it some sort of an ancient calendar? Who knows? Only about 15% of the Great Lakes floors have been explored. Now, scientists are gearing up for a deeper dive into this mystery, both literally and figuratively. They want to analyze the lake beds surrounding the craters, hoping that maybe something in the environment around them might have caused them to appear. They have initiatives like Lakebed 2030. These missions should map the entire underwater landscape. This would help us learn tons of interesting stuff about Lake Michigan and our planet's past. Who knows what other secrets these dark waters hide?
Some mistakes have the power to change the course of history. One such story has to do with an old, boring key that could have saved the Titanic from its infamous demise. The key belonged to the crow's nest locker that housed binoculars, which could have helped the lookouts spot the iceberg sooner. There's more. The key wasn't even on board the ship when it set sail. The second officer took it with him when he was taken off the ship at the last minute. As the story goes, the officer forgot to hand the key over to his replacement in his hurry to disembark. So, when the lookouts were in desperate need of binoculars, they were out of luck. One of the lookouts, named Fred Fleet, even testified that if they had had binoculars, they would have spotted the iceberg in time to avoid it. And when asked how much sooner, Fleet replied, "Enough to get out of the way." In 2015, some auctioneers got their hands on Blair's key and presented it as one of the most important artifacts from the Titanic. They truly believed it could have saved the ship. Blair kept the key as a souvenir and passed it down to his daughter, Nancy. At one point, it was up for auction with a price tag of over $80,000. Blair himself was quite the hero, it seems. A year after the Titanic disaster, he was awarded a gallantry medal for saving a crewman who had fallen overboard while he had been on board the liner Majestic. He may have forgotten a key, but he sure didn't forget to be a hero when it counted. This next story is both funny and tragic. It's about NASA's lost $125 million Mars Climate Orbiter. The spacecraft engineers failed to convert from English to metric measurements before the craft was launched, and as a result, they lost it. The navigation team at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory used the metric system of millimeters and meters, while Lockheed Martin Astronautics in Denver used the English system of inches, feet, and pounds. JPL engineers mistook acceleration readings measured in English units of pound-seconds for a metric measure of force called Newton seconds. What's worse, is that none of JPL's quality control procedures caught the error in the 9 months it took the spacecraft to make its 461 million mile flight to Mars. That's a long time to be lost in translation, don't you think? The miscalculations were enough to throw the spacecraft so far off track that it flew too deeply into the Martian atmosphere and was destroyed when it entered its initial orbit around Mars. It's embarrassing to lose a spacecraft to such a simple math error. And it's hard to think of another example of such a large loss due to English versus metric confusion. Ever heard about the mathematical mistake that led to the discovery of the New World? Spoiler alert, it involves a guy named Christopher Columbus and a really big globe. Back in 1492, Columbus set sail from Spain with a mission to find a new trade route to Asia. He was convinced that he was less than 3,000 miles away from Japan, and just a bit more sailing would get him to the Indies with all their tasty spices. The only problem was that Columbus was a bit off in his calculations, like way off. He made a mistake in estimating the size of the globe, which led him to believe that Earth was far smaller than it actually is. Now I know what you're thinking. Wasn't Columbus afraid that he would fall off the edge of the world? Contrary to popular myth, Columbus and his crew knew the Earth was a globe, just like the ancient Greeks did 2 millennia earlier. They weren't worried about falling off the edge, but rather about the size of the ocean they planned on crossing. And to make matters worse, Columbus had no idea that an unknown landmass existed between Spain and Asia. After weeks at sea, Columbus finally reached the Caribbean. He believed that he had landed on the outskirts of Asia, and so named the islands the West Indies. He went on to explore the Caribbean and the northern coast of South America. But here's where things get really interesting. Even though Columbus insisted until his last day that he had reached Asia, another Italian explorer named Amerigo Vespucci mapped the eastern shore of South America down to Brazil and proved conclusively that Columbus had actually discovered a whole new world. A German mapmaker saw Amerigo's maps and labeled the new landmass America after him. And since his maps were super popular at the time, the name stuck. One man named Alexander Fleming stumbled upon one of the most significant medical discoveries of all time by accident. At one point in his career, Fleming observed the demise of many people from uncontrollable infections. Antiseptics were used to fight this, but they often did more harm than good. In 1922, while he had a cold himself, Fleming transferred some of his, nasal discharge to a petri dish and left it on his cluttered desk. When he finally examined it weeks later, he found that an enzyme had some antimicrobial properties. It wasn't until 1928, when Fleming left an uncovered petri dish next to an open window, that he stumbled upon the discovery that would change the world. The dish became contaminated with fungus spores. And when he examined them under the microscope, Fleming discovered that the bacteria near the fungus were dying. He managed to isolate the fungus and found that it was effective against numerous things that caused diseases. And thus, penicillin was discovered. As Fleming himself put it, "I did not discover penicillin. Nature did that. I only discovered it by accident." Talk about a lucky break. In the early 1520s, the east coast of the United States of America was a big mystery waiting to be solved. The Spanish found Florida, and the English and Portuguese found Newfoundland, but the area in between was like a blank spot on the map. France decided to take action and sent an expedition to explore the area. They chose a guy called Giovanni da Verrazzano to lead the trip. For this expedition, he got 4 ships. Unfortunately, 2 of them were shipwrecked, and a third one went home after doing some other business on the Spanish coast. Only the flagship, La Dauphine, crossed the Atlantic with Verrazzano and his 50-man crew. Verrazzano set sail from Madeira. and landed at Cape Fear. From there, he sailed south, but got a little scared of running into the Spanish, so he returned somewhere north of Charleston. He anchored not far from his original landing spot, but unlike other explorers, he preferred to anchor well out at sea. He did send a boat to the shore, and he met the natives. They were described as wearing just some animal skins covering their bodies and garlands of bird feathers. As Verrazzano sailed along the coast, he reached the outer banks of North Carolina. He thought that the waters he discovered were those of the Pacific. In reality, what he'd stumbled upon was the Pamlico Sound. He thought that North America was just a long, extremely narrow strip of land. This mistake led mapmakers to show North America as almost completely divided in two. Moving on, Verrazzano reached a beautiful place that he called Arcadia, probably Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Sailing further north, he missed the entrances to Chesapeake and Delaware Bays because he kept quite far from the coast until New Jersey. Then, the moment we've all been waiting for, Verrazzano discovered New York Harbor, and he anchored in the Narrows. Later, it was named after him, and now it is spanned by the Verrazzano Narrows Bridge. Once Verrazzano's Sea appeared on the map, it became widely accepted and impacted loads of future explorers. For example, Henry Hudson went looking for a passage to the Pacific in the middle latitudes of the continent. But, as it turns out, the Englishman never did find the Pacific Ocean anywhere near Virginia. And the cartographic myth eventually faded away. It's funny to think about how a mistaken belief could have such an impact on history.
7,500 years ago, the Pacific floor collapsed. Massive landslides buried the seabed in seconds. Fast forward to today, robot subs have examined the place. Scans have revealed proof of at least 10 distinct cyclical megaquakes. Now, researchers warn, the plates are still locked and building pressure, even today. If they start moving, that could trigger new red alert earthquakes and send disastrous tsunamis toward the coast. Let's look at the map. The fault here is like a giant zipper. It's over 600 miles, stretching from Northern California to Canada. It's called the Cascadia subduction zone, and it's a part of the Ring of Fire. You know, the famous giant horseshoe around the Pacific that can serve as your where-to-go reminder if you're into volcanic and earthquake tourism. One of Cascadia's biggest events happened around the year 1700. There are no local written records of it, but there is a story. A well-known indigenous legend tells of an epic battle between a thunderbird and a whale. In the story, the thunderbird's wing beats make the ground shake. The whale's thrashing sends seawater flooding inland. The thunderbird wins by finally grabbing the whale and slamming it back down, shaking the land itself. Many researchers believe that this legend originated from the real earthquake of 1700. But we don't just have cool myths to give us the full picture. In the early 1700s, samurai officials recorded waves flooding villages and rice fields. But nobody felt the earthquake that must come first. That's why they nicknamed this event the Orphan Tsunami. But it did have a parent, and it took scientists 300 years to finally connect it back to Cascadia. To see Cascadia's past, researchers sent robot subs to scan the bottom in crazy detail. They expected to see a simple crack, but what they found looked more like giant underwater steps. Some of those steps are about 33 feet tall, like a 3-story building. That only happens when a big piece of the seafloor snaps off, breaks loose, and slides all at once, not slowly. When that happens, it kicks up a mud avalanche. Picture a jar of dirt and water. Shake it hard, and a fresh layer settles at the bottom. Each layer is basically a timestamp from a huge quake. When scientists counted and dated them, they found 10 separate megaquakes that hit one after the other over thousands of years. That means that Cascadia doesn't let pressure out little by little. it stays stuck for a long time, then suddenly breaks out violently. That pattern is why the Cascadia subduction zone is considered one of the scariest fault systems in North America today. So what's actually happening down there? The plates aren't sliding smoothly, they're stuck. And while they're stuck, the coastline is getting quietly bent out of shape like a ruler you're flexing in your hands. It doesn't look dramatic day to day, but it's been loading up for centuries. When that tension finally snaps, the coast will instantly drop. Geologists call this co-seismic subsidence. We're talking about the ground plunging 6 to 8 feet vertically in a matter of minutes. Imagine standing on a beach. The shaking stops, and you realize the ocean is rushing in. Not just because of a wave, but because the land you're standing on has physically sunk below sea level. That one move is enough to shove the seafloor out of position and force the ocean above it to react. Cascadia can produce a magnitude 9.0. That's top tier, categorized as the most destructive natural event that can happen. It can shake the ground for minutes, pushing and pulling everything back and forth until buildings and bridges start falling down. A 9.0 class quake also means the seafloor is vibrating and shifting, lifting in some spots, dropping in others, all in one sudden motion. A tsunami starts when the seafloor moves and pushes a huge amount of water out of the way. If the bottom suddenly lifts or drops, the water above it gets displaced instantly. That water has to go somewhere, so it races outward in every direction. Out in deep water, that wave is rarely tall. It spreads out across a long distance, so it can pass under ships without anyone noticing. The danger is speed. In the open ocean, tsunamis can travel around 500 to 600 miles per hour. That's like traveling from New York to Detroit in 60 minutes. Eventually, the ocean starts to pile up, getting taller by the second. Near shore, it can stack up to tens of feet, and in extreme cases, it can run up to 100 feet on land. It swallows the coast, then drags everything back to sea with a violent tug before the next hit arrives. But that's not all. When the fault snaps, it often triggers massive underwater landslides. When a huge chunk of seafloor collapses, it can shove water locally, like dropping a boulder into a tub. In the Cascadia subduction zone, you aren't just dealing with the earthquake's kick. You're getting a 1-2 punch from the shifting crust and the crumbling slopes combined. On parts of the Oregon coast, emergency experts say the shaking could last 5 to 7 minutes, long enough to realize what's happening and still won't be over. Then comes the scariest part. In some places, a tsunami can hit in 15 to 30 minutes. Remember, the earthquake is a warning. If you're on the coast and you feel strong, long shaking, you do not need to wait for a text alert or a siren, or someone on the news to yell tsunami. During the tremors, the basic recommendation is to literally drop to the ground, cover, and hold on, staying away from windows and chandeliers that can fall on you. As tempting as it is, we shouldn't stop to make a reel out of the situation. Before anything happens, make one decision while your brain is calm. Pick the closest high ground and go for it. Not somewhere uphill, an actual spot. If you ever needed a reason to learn your neighborhood, this is it. Your instinct might say, get into the car and drive. But don't. Roads are probably jammed and bridges could be damaged. People who live on the coast already know to keep it practical, with shoes on the bed and a go bag prepared just in case. The danger doesn't end with the first impact because the tsunami waves, well, they come in waves. The initial hit is rarely the largest, and the ocean can continue to pulse in and out for hours. This creates a violent tug-of-war. The receding water acts like a massive vacuum, dragging anything caught in the backwash out to sea. Japan's 2011 disaster is the most recent vivid example of what a magnitude 9.1 can do. The seafloor shifted in a single massive heave, and minutes later, the ocean literally rearranged the coast. A huge wall of water crashed inland,
reaching over 100 feet high in some spots and turning the coastline into a conveyor belt of debris. It was like water turned cars into giant bowling balls and shipping containers into massive metal bricks, smashing ports and drowning low-lying airports and electrical substations. Finally, what do officials say about the timeline for the possible next disaster hitting Cascadia? Well, they can't give us precise dates, but they did announce some odds. For the biggest, scariest earthquake possible, the United States Geological Survey says there is about a 10% to 15% chance it'll happen in the next 50 years. Chances for a quake that isn't the mega version are 1 in 3 in the next 5 decades. Those odds are actually pretty high. But here is why it isn't all that grim. Scientists know this isn't random. Cascadia has a pattern, and patterns are what preparation runs on. We already know how to build for big shaking, and we're getting better at spotting where stress is building. It doesn't mean we can stop the earthquake, but it means we're getting way better at knowing what to expect. In the meantime, just keep a go bag by the door and maybe take a walk around your neighborhood every once in a while. This area might just be the most important spot in America right now, as it is worth over $1 trillion. There's something incredibly valuable hidden right here at Thacker Pass, and it is going to shake things up, not just in Nevada, but in the US economy and its global relations. The McDermott Caldera is a massive area, about 28 miles long by 22 miles wide, stretching across northern Nevada and southern Oregon. It's in Humboldt County, a quiet, rural place with just one main city that's going to change a lot in the next 5 to 10 years. That's because they found white gold there. We're talking about lithium. And to explain why this metal is so important, we need a scale. On one side, we place a chunk of lithium, and on the other, an apple. What do you think will happen? If both have the same volume, the scale is going to tip toward the apple. That's because lithium is super light. Its density is about 0.3 ounces per cubic inch, which makes it the lightest solid you can find at room temperature. Lithium is also extremely reactive. That means it combines with other elements very easily, and it can catch fire just as easily. Mix it with water, fire. Expose it to air, yep, fire again. But when you combine its lightness with its high reactivity, you get a material that's perfect for batteries, like the one powering your smartphone, laptop, or even your electric car. Nevada's been hiding this treasure for about 16 million years. The McDermott Caldera used to be a volcanic hotspot, spewing molten rock and creating a huge lake filled with mineral-rich waters. Over time, that lake dried up, leaving behind thick layers of clay loaded with lithium. Right now, Thacker Pass Mine is sitting on one of the biggest untapped lithium reserves in the world, worth about $1.5 trillion. If everything goes as planned, they expect it to produce about 40,000 tons of high-quality lithium a year. And that's enough to make batteries for up to 800,000 electric cars. Like I mentioned earlier, this metal is the backbone of modern batteries. And with the world racing toward green energy, the demand for lithium is skyrocketing. Since 2020, its price has gone up more than 10 times, making it the most expensive battery metal in the world. That means it's way more expensive than magnesium, nickel, cobalt, and other materials used in rechargeable batteries. Right now, we're using about 1.16 million tons of lithium per year, and roughly 85% of it goes into making batteries, mostly for cars. Between 2030 and 2040, experts think we will need to double the money we're putting into production, from $94 billion to $188 billion. At the same time, investment in batteries will jump by over 200%, reaching $686 billion. Finally, by 2050, the demand for lithium is expected to be more than 10 times higher than what we're producing now. Sorry, I know that's a lot of numbers, but I just want to show how important Thacker Pass will be for the whole world. This mine is going to be key to keeping everything running. I mean, literally,
since most of the future demand will be for things like cars, electric bikes, scooters, and renewable energy storage. Nevada could also be the epicenter of a global energy revolution, with the US aiming to cut pollution by 50% by 2030. A big part of that is replacing gas-powered vehicles with electric ones. And to make that happen, America is going to need a whole lot more lithium than it's producing right now. Nowadays, most of the metal used in the United States come from countries like Chile and Argentina. So if America wants to be a leader in this market, it really needs to invest more and more in projects like Thacker Pass. But there's another challenge. Finding lithium in a mine is one thing, but refining it is another story. Just like diamonds are carefully cut and shaped to bring out their sparkle and sold in rings and necklaces, something similar needs to be done with lithium. The raw material that comes from the mines has to be refined into a pure form that can actually be used in things like batteries. And China pretty much dominates this part of the market, and they're responsible for about 75% of global lithium-ion battery production. In other words, it doesn't matter if a country finds this powerful metal on its land, it will probably still need China to help refine it. So, the US is eager to strengthen its supply chain. In fact, they're so excited about this possibility that authorities have invested over $2 billion in loans into the Nevada project. Because of that, Thacker Pass could make the US a leader in lithium production worldwide. If their estimates are right, the McDermott caldera could hold nearly half of the world's known lithium reserves. It would almost double the reserves found in Bolivia's salt flats, for example, which used to hold the record for the world's largest deposit. This discovery is about to change Humboldt County for good. Those quiet streets surrounded by nature will never feel the same again. The mine will need about 2,000 workers who will probably move there from other cities. Those workers will need houses, hospitals, schools for their kids, and all the necessary services. Do you see how it's like a ripple effect? For every person hired to work on the project during construction, 6 more people will get hired in the state to support them. Thacker Pass is also going to have a huge impact on the economy, not just in Nevada, but all across the country. People expect the mine to be active for 35 years, and each year it's expected to generate over $2 billion. But here's the thing. In Thacker Pass, they'll be extracting lithium from clay, and this process has never been done on such a huge scale before. So it's kind of a hit or miss. But if it works, it could completely change the industry. Big question. Who's interested in all this? Well, we've got 3 big companies eyeing the lithium market in the US. First, there's ExxonMobil. The oil giant wants to start producing lithium by 2027, and they have plans to become the top supplier for electric vehicles by 2030. Then there's General Motors, the company behind big car brands like Chevrolet and Cadillac. They're so interested in this business that they agreed to pay $625 million for a 38% stake in Thacker Pass. And finally, Tesla. In 2023, they started building a factory in Texas to process lithium. It's all part of their plan to handle more of their supply chain themselves. Now that you know how important lithium is, you might be wondering, what if we run out? Well, that could happen, since it comes from mining and, just like gold, is a finite resource. But that doesn't mean we'd have to give up smartphones or electric cars. If we ever run out of this metal, we'd probably find new ways to produce batteries. In fact, some experts think thermal batteries could be the next big thing. They store extra energy from renewable resources like wind or solar power, which are very cheap. So they represent a new way of storing energy at a small fraction of the cost. Nowadays, they're primarily used for powering the production of steel, cement, and chemicals. Thermal batteries are also being used to heat and cool large buildings. However, more and more projects are focusing on bringing this technology into private spaces, like houses and apartments. Experts are optimistic that initiatives like these could make thermal batteries as well known as electric batteries, and they might soon become a regular part of our daily lives. There's a lake in the heart of Asia that holds 1/5 of all the world's liquid freshwater. It's more than all the 5 Great Lakes have together. Even if all the rivers on our planet suddenly changed their direction and set on a mission to drain this lake, it would take them a whole year to finish the job. I'm talking about the deepest lake in the world, Lake Baikal. If you decide to go all the way down to its deepest point, prepare for a journey of almost 5,400 feet. The descent takes several hours, but the rift floor of the lake is way deeper, between 5 to 7 miles beneath the surface. It means it could be even further down than the Challenger Deep, which is the deepest known place on Earth. The amount of water it has would be enough for everyone on Earth to have something to drink for up to 50 years. This mighty giant of a lake replenishes its water completely every 383 years. Baikal has a great delivery crew of over 300 rivers and streams, bringing their waters right in. And only one river flows out of Baikal, the Angara, which is headed straight for the Arctic Ocean. Baikal isn't only the deepest, but also the oldest existing freshwater lake in the world. It formed at least 25 million years ago. It all began when the Earth's crust decided to play Tetris and created the lake and the surrounding mountains. At some point, Baikal must have been just a humble riverbed, but then tremors and fractures shook the Earth, and the distance between the shores got bigger. Water levels rose thanks to the melting glaciers. Then, several lakes formed and later merged into one. Baikal is one of around 20 lakes in the world that are older than 1 million years. And since it wasn't disturbed by glacial periods, it's a perfect research ground for scientists. Its deep-drilled core sediments can tell a lot about the climate of our planet in different periods. Since Baikal is in a rift basin with 2,000 seismic tremors per year, the lake is deepening and still growing in size. Its shores drift apart at around the same rate as South America and Africa are moving away from each other, so it has all the potential to become an ocean. Another thing Baikal has in common with the oceans is that it has water rich in oxygen, even at its lowest depths. This is one of the reasons why the fauna of the lake is so incredibly rich. It's home to over 2,500 various animals and 1,000 plant varieties. Around half of them are unique and only exist in this area, like the endemic algae, the Baikal omul fish, and the Baikal oilfish. There are also some bears, elk, and lynx living on its shores. They must appreciate the fact that the temperatures around the lake are always higher than the rest of Siberia, thanks to its huge water mass. Most Baikal dwellers prefer to stick to the bottom of the lake, but there's one brave guy you'll meet if you decide to visit. Meet the Baikal seal, also known as Nerpa. It's the only true freshwater seal in the world. Nerpa's eyes are so cute it nearly landed the part of Puss in Boots in Shrek. Nerpa in Boots sounds good to me. These huge eyes are there to help them follow their favorite pelagic fish underwater. There are other seal kinds that can handle freshwater or use it to breathe, but these cuties spend their entire lives in it. But wait, how did seals, which are supposed to be oceanic creatures, end up in a lake miles and miles away from the sea? About 400,000 years ago, during the Pleistocene era, these adventurous creatures traveled up the river and drainage systems that connected Lake Baikal to the Arctic Ocean. The ringed seal that still lives in the Arctic is believed to be the Baikal seal's closest ancestor. Today, Baikal seals are confined to their freshwater home because of the changes in waterways. And they seem to be pretty happy with their home as they can choose from a huge variety of food to eat. The seals mostly hang out in the north and central areas of the lake, but move south in the winter. The lake gets covered with ice, which they use as a chill-out zone, just like their oceanic cousins use rocks or the beach. Since at least 1969, Lake Baikal has had some mysterious ice rings pop up randomly here and there. At some point, they got so big that the astronauts even spotted them from space. The rings usually appear in late April, but can be there in January or May. Scientists couldn't crack the code on how these rings form for a while. They had all sorts of theories, and the most popular involved methane gas bubbles from the lake's depths. But then, scientists noticed that some of the rings were in shallower waters, where gas emissions don't happen. So, an international team of scientists decided to solve the mystery. They traveled to Lake Baikal, drilled holes in the ice, and dropped sensors into the water. In 2016, when they started the research, they heard that 2 vans had gotten stuck in the mysterious ice rings. Once they had analyzed the data from the sensors, it turned out that the secret behind the rings was warm eddies flowing clockwise under its ice cover. The currents were less intense in the center of the eddies, so the ice above them was thicker at the edges. The waters of the lake are so clear that you can see some extremely deep parts up to over 130 feet down. This is thanks to the surrounding mountains that send off melting ice right in. Plankton that live in the lake also helps clean the floating debris. When this crystal clear water freezes, it forms an unusually thick and see-through layer of ice. The wind likes to play sculptor on Baikal and creates one-of-a-kind pieces of art here. It picks up water, which, of course, freezes into the most unusual designs. Frozen bubbles and icicles you've never seen before. The location and geography of the lakes and the cycles of melting and refreezing create the perfect conditions for this ice workshop. And you can even see rocks that seem to be floating. The bottom of the rock freezes to the surface of the ice. Then, the strong winds wear away the surroundings, leaving a perfect pedestal for the rock. If you think the floating rocks look eerie, how about Baikal's version of the Loch Ness Monster? The local Buryat people have a legend about the water dragon master that lives in the lake. A dragon is believed to be the most powerful creature living on Earth in Asian mythology. They believe there are 4 dragons living in the 4 seas, each responsible for one of the cardinal directions. Baikal is the North Sea in this story. The image of this dragon is supposedly etched in ancient petroglyphs on the cliffs of Baikal. There's also a hefty stone slab that looks like a monument dated back to somewhere between the 3rd and the 9th century BCE, depicting a mysterious water monster. Imagine the stories this stone could tell, echoing the whispers of a bygone era and leaving us to unravel the enigma of the Baikal cliffs. The legend says that a local warrior was chasing the dragon. He finally reached the largest Baikal island of Alkan. He was ready to face and defeat the dragon, but the beast turned into a beautiful girl, and they got married. That's one unusual twist to a classic defeat the dragon and take the girl story. So, local legends describe that dragon as a giant sturgeon with an almost gator-like snout and armored body. In reality, the mythical monster must be one of the many huge fish living in the lake. They can afford to grow to several feet in length thanks to the high levels of oxygen in the water. Beluga sturgeon can weigh several thousands of pounds, lives up to 50 or 60 years, and never stops growing.
So it turns out that you can't drive between South America and North America. And there's a simple reason for that. There are no roads connecting the 2 continents, not even a rudimentary one. Technically, you could try your luck crossing on foot, but let me tell you, that would be a huge mistake. The region that connects the 2 continents is called the Darien Gap. It stretches across southern Panama's Darien province and the northern part of Colombia. The only land route there is a 60-mile jungle trek. Crossing it can take anywhere from 3 to 10 days. It depends on weather conditions, how much you're carrying, and honestly, just pure luck. Chance plays a big role here, because this isn't some chill, relaxing nature walk. It's a harsh, extreme environment, known for being completely isolated and one of the most dangerous places on Earth. Still, people seem to forget that and go there anyway. Every year, the number of people crossing just keeps growing. In 2014, fewer than 10,000 people crossed the gap. In 2023, that number increased to 520,000. Now, you might be wondering, what are so many people doing in the middle of the two American continents, risking all that danger? Well, that's because the Darien Gap has become a route for refugees migrating to North America. But to get there, they face all kinds of dangers, from insect bites and infections to serious fractures. We're talking about a no-man's land. Since there are no police stations, immigrants must also watch out for thieves. Along the way, they have no choice but to rely on and support each other. Most people start the crossing with at least a tent or tarp, rain boots, water, and some food. But these things get heavy fast, and people normally can't carry enough supplies for the entire journey. At some point, people start drinking river water to avoid dehydration. But the water's full of bacteria and dirt, so it causes intestinal issues. And if things get serious, there's no medical help there. To make this whole scenario even worse, the temperatures are brutal, often hitting over 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, a small subset of people who venture through the Darien Gap are hardcore adventurers and travelers looking for a survival experience in the jungle. But this region is no place for a relaxing vacation. A group of tourists who went there in 2023 ended up getting jungle rot, a fungus that affects the feet. The situation got so bad that a woman had to be carried out by the group on the last day because she couldn't walk. No matter how prepared people are for the Darien Gap, in the end, survival mostly comes down to luck. Out there, travelers won't find cities with solid infrastructure where they can crash at a hotel and gear up for the next day. In some spots, they might stumble across basic camps right in the jungle. These camps might offer wooden platforms for tents, bucket showers, toilets, and even plates of chicken and rice. But it all comes at a price. Wi-Fi, for example, might cost $2 an hour, and that seems like a pretty good deal, considering there's no cell phone service on the trail. They pretty much lose all contact with the outside world. Now picture a dense rainforest with steep, muddy terrain. The hiking trail is littered with boulders and tangled with vines, like nature's own tripwires. It climbs sharply over a mountain, becoming a serious challenge even for someone in good physical shape. The area also gets constant heavy rainfall, which can lead to landslides, flash flooding, and extremely muddy conditions. The situation gets so intense that even the t-shirts and faces of those who make the crossing end up covered in mud. They'll also have to cross a lot of fast-moving rivers. A Venezuelan dad who recently went through the area with his two kids said their sneakers ripped apart on the very first day. That's how powerful the rivers can be. And they're deep, too. Sometimes the water reaches all the way up to their shoulders. But the dangers in that area aren't recent. For centuries, the Darien Gap was thought to be impossible to cross. The first Europeans who ventured into Latin America saw it as kind of a jungle training school. They totally knew about its dangers, but still, many adventurers tried to make the crossing in the years that followed. In 1854, for example, an expedition disappeared for 49 days in the jungle, battling starvation and exhaustion. Then again, in 1870, a group of 100 men set out to cross it. Even though they were well prepared and carried cutting-edge equipment for the time, they still suffered tremendously during the journey. They had to rely on incredible resilience to survive the challenge. Over the years, people who ventured in often ended up passing away from hunger, thirst, and even drowning in rivers. They also faced the risk of being attacked by dangerous animals like jaguars, white-lipped pecaries, and the fer-de-lance, a fast, irritable snake that is one of the most venomous out there. The area is also swarming with mosquitoes, which can spread serious health problems. Leaning against trees to rest can also be risky. This jungle is full of spiked chunga palm trees, which are covered in long black spines up to 8 inches long. Unfortunately for us, these spines are covered in all sorts of bacteria. Just brush against a chunga, and you could end up with infected wounds. And yet another danger is getting lost in the dense forest and never finding your way back to safety. These days, though, this risk is a lot lower. Some people have mentioned color-coded markers that help guide travelers and keep them from going the wrong way. If they see blue or green fabric tied to trees, it means keep walking. But if they spot red fabric, that's a sign they're going the wrong way and need to turn around quickly. Since there are so many dangers, why not just build a road through the Darien Gap? While it might seem like a good idea, building a road connecting Panama and Colombia isn't really that simple. The Darien Gap has a humid climate, tough terrain, and constant rainfall, which means any attempt to build a functional road would be highly challenging and super expensive. Even though there have been previous attempts to fill in the gap. See, there's a huge road system called the Pan-American Highway, which stretches all the way from Alaska to the southern tip of Argentina. Nowadays, this highway hits a roadblock right at the Darien Gap. But it wasn't supposed to be like this, as the original idea was for the road to go through there. Leaders from Latin American countries tried to make this plan happen in the 70s, and then again in the 90s. But a lot of people were against it, mainly because they wanted to protect the local communities and the rainforest. Since the Darien Gap is mostly untouched by humans, it's one of the most biodiverse places on the planet. It's believed that 1 in 5 species are endemic to the region, meaning they only exist in that specific area, like the Darien pocket gopher and the slatty slender mouse opossum. A road would have really damaged the ecosystem in the area, so the plans were scrapped. Eventually, an alternative was created to travel by sea. At least 2 companies started a ferry service connecting the 2 countries. However, the business wasn't profitable, and they ended up shutting down. Not long ago, Panama decided to close the Darien Gap route. Now they're sealed off with barbed wire fencing. It might just be a matter of time before other routes are created. But if you are an adventurer looking to visit South America, it's probably not best to wait for that. Traveling by plane to Colombia will always be a much safer option.
In Hawaii, the Big Island is quite literally expanding. Every few years, glowing rivers of lava spill from Kilauea or Mauna Loa and pour into the ocean, instantly turning seawater into steam and molten rock into a brand new coastline. Since the 1980s, eruptions have added hundreds of acres of new land. Far to the north, Alaska's capital has a very unique position. Juneau may look like any other city on a map, but there's one catch. You can't drive there. Huge mountains and massive glaciers block every route, leaving the town completely cut off from the rest of the continent. Seriously, the only way in or out is by boat or plane. Up in Alaska's far north, the city of Utqiagvik spends about 66 days in polar night from mid-November to mid-January with no sunrise. Then it flips to weeks of 24/7 daylight in summer. The Outer Banks in North Carolina are known for slowly moving west, getting pushed inland by waves and storms that scoop up sand from the ocean side and drop it on the sound side. It's known as the place where hurricanes can easily create new inlets. In California's Eureka Dunes, sand can sing. When dry sand grains move down a slope, they bump against each other and create a deep humming or booming noise that can last for several seconds. Scientists refer to this phenomenon as booming sand, but early explorers believed the desert was growling. Some places can't sit still, and others refuse to stop growing. The Rocky Mountains, for example, are still growing. Unlike the older Appalachian Range, which stopped millions of years ago, the Rockies are geologically young and active. It's a slow process that can't be properly measured, but we do know that they are rising. Did you know that rivers are not always content with their direction? In the 1800s, the Chicago River flowed straight into Lake Michigan, all the way into the city's drinking supply. After years of sewage and sickness, engineers thought of something original. They made the river run backward. They dug canals, blasted through rock, and rerouted the current toward the Mississippi instead. To this day, the river still flows the wrong way. Kentucky is famous for being split between 2 time zones. The western half runs on Central Time, while the east keeps Eastern Time, meaning you can gain or lose an hour just by driving through the middle of the state. The Nevada desert is filled with ghost towns. There are over 600 of them.
Most were born overnight during the mining booms, only to die just as fast when the gold ran out. Wooden saloons, empty banks, and rusting rail lines still sit under the sun like movie sets left behind. But what about a ghost town that has a fire burning underneath? In Pennsylvania, there's a place called Centralia that's been on fire since 1962. A coal seam beneath the town caught fire and never went out. It forced nearly everyone to move. The ground still smokes even today. Another fact, my favorite one, is about the whole island full of monkeys. Near the coast of South Carolina, Morgan Island is home to around 4,000 rhesus monkeys with no humans in sight. The monkeys were brought there for research decades ago, and the population exploded. Visitors aren't allowed ashore, partly to protect the colony and partly, well, because it belongs to monkeys now. In Montana's Glacier National Park, there's a mountain where one raindrop can choose 3 paths. Fall on one slope and it flows into the Pacific Ocean. Another sends it to the Atlantic. A third sends it north toward the Arctic. The spot is called Triple Divide Peak, and it's one of the few places on Earth where 3 oceans share a single starting line. And if you think 3-way water splits are rare, there's also the Continental Divide that doesn't actually divide anything. In Wyoming's Great Divide Basin, rainwater gets trapped in the middle and has nowhere to go. It doesn't reach the ocean at all, it just evaporates or sinks into the ground. A lonely no-exit zone in the middle of the continent. Mount Washington is famous because it once held the record for the fastest directly measured surface wind at 231 miles per hour in 1934. That's faster than a race car and strong enough to knock you flat in seconds. Have you ever heard about Lake Superior? It's so vast that it holds about 10% of all the world's surface freshwater. The sheer size of it changes the weather. It is creating its own fog and storms. It's so extremely cold that it affects the air above and produces its own snow. What about bioluminescence? In Florida's Indian River Lagoon, microorganisms called bioluminescent plankton light up the water at night, turning it into a soft electric blue when stirred. It's a rare and beautiful sight to behold. In the middle of Utah's Red Desert, there's a natural bridge so large it looks engineered by giants. It's called Landscape Arch, a ribbon of stone stretching nearly 300 feet from end to end. That's almost as long as a football field, yet only a few feet thick at its narrowest point. A section of it collapsed in the 1990s, and today it's so fragile that hikers can only admire it from a distance. However, Utah hides another enigmatic structure called the Upheaval Dome. Scientists aren't sure it's a meteor impact or the result of ancient salt pushing upward from below. Either way, it's a massive circular crater that looks like the desert tried to grow a mountain in the wrong direction. In Arizona, we have the Barringer crater. It's one of the best preserved meteor craters on Earth, about 3/4 of a mile wide and nearly 600 feet deep. Scientists believe it was carved out 50,000 years ago when a space rock the size of a small building slammed into the desert at around 29,000 miles per hour. In Michigan, between the 2 peninsulas, there's something unexpected: a floating post office. The Westcott Company has delivered mail on the river since the late 1800s. The J.W. Westcott II has done it since 1949. It's even got its own zip code, 48222. The ship sails up to passing freighters and delivers mail by rope and buckets. It's the only floating zip code in the country, and proof that even the Postal Service can be creative and cool. On the East Coast, Maryland happens to be the only U.S. state without natural lakes. The ones you see, like Deep Creek or Lake Habib, are human-made. Even Arizona has a couple of natural lakes. They just dry up during drought years. Southwest of there, Florida likes sinking holes. Below the sunny beaches and retirement communities is a landscape made of limestone, which dissolves in water. This creates thousands of sinkholes ranging from little pits in backyards to huge underwater caves. Central Florida even got the nickname Sinkhole Alley.
off the coast is one of the biggest examples, the Green Banana Hole, which goes 155 feet under the Gulf of Mexico. In Arkansas, there's this cool park that you have to visit. You can actually dig for treasure there. It's called Crater of Diamonds State Park. It's the only spot in the US where anyone can hunt for real diamonds and keep whatever they find. The park is sitting on an old volcanic crater that brought diamonds to the surface millions of years ago. Oklahoma, however, is infamous for its tornadoes. It averages around 50-plus tornadoes a year and ranks among the highest for their strength. Each spring, the sky there turns from calm blue to chaos in minutes. Another quirky place is in Wyoming. It's called Buford. It's known for having a population of just one person. It's right off Interstate 80, and for years, this one resident was also the mayor, store clerk, and postmaster all rolled into one. After about 2 decades, he moved on and the town got auctioned, complete with its gas station and the sign that proudly read, Population 1. Sounds haunted, huh? Well, that's it for today. I gave you 25 US facts to help you shine during your next trivia quiz. And you can hit like. See ya!
Wow, talk about noisy! Toadfish have a unique ability. They can create a very strong sound. The human ear usually can't hear it, especially if only one fish is making the sound. But if many fish are making the sound at the same time, well, it's going to be hard to forget, and you may not be able to stop hearing it. Toadfish are a common part of the fauna off the coast of Sausalito in California, and every year thousands of them gather in the shoals to party and scream. Together, they create a collective sound that can be easily heard by those in the houses near the shore. The noise, which can be described as a low hum, can even penetrate into the city center. Some people get bothered by this constant humming. This is a unique natural phenomenon, but there's a catch. At some point, the fish swim away from the shore, but the sound remains. Also, scientists have proven that this fish-made noise can't spread through the city, and many residents of the coastal areas don't hear it. But still, some people continue to hear this strange hum. In a similar case, imagine that you've moved to a small village in Scotland. You rent a house, have dinner, and go to bed. As you're settling into sleep, a strange hum permeates your room. It sounds like someone started their truck somewhere in the distance. The sound is similar to the sound of a low, loud bass that comes from a speaker. The hum keeps you awake. You get migraines and even feel nauseous. In the morning, you find out that some other locals also hear this terrible buzzing. They tell you about a huge factory located nearby. Machines, engines, steam boilers, big air vents, and generators emit a loud, heavy hum that passes through the air. Sound waves spread throughout the village and annoy people with a sharp sense of hearing. You've been hearing this sound for several days and suffering from insomnia. Then, one day, the factory goes bankrupt. All the workers leave their positions and turn off all the engines and fans. Great, you'll finally sleep in peace. But you know what? The sound doesn't disappear. It follows you wherever you are. And it's not about the factory or the fish or the truck engine. Imagine that you're walking down the streets of a small English town. There are a lot of planes flying right above you. The hum they make follows you. Even in bed you can hear it. You wonder if there's an airport nearby. You ask the locals and find out there's not even a runway here. But where does the sound come from? You raise your head to look up and see a clear sky. There are no planes, but there's noise. And you're not the only one who hears it. Some locals are sure that the hum comes from high-speed traffic on the highway. Thousands of cars drive in 2 directions and leave massive sound waves behind. But at night, there are no cars there, and the sound remains. Maybe you're going mad. People's stories about the hum save you from this madness, and it's not just the residents of this town that know about it. About 4% of people on the planet hear the hum. Strangers tell each other about the hum that prevents them from sleeping and concentrating on something. The sound follows them everywhere and doesn't stop. Some people hear it in certain places, so they move to other cities. Maybe you're hearing it right now and not paying attention. But be careful. If you recognize it once, you won't be able to stop hearing it. There's a website and a forum on the internet dedicated to the hum. People from all over the world put geolocations in places where they heard this mysterious phenomenon. You can find thousands of these coordinates on the site and even add your own. People describe different levels of noise and share their sources. Some theories say that the hum is the sound of our planet coming from the core. Someone else is sure that it comes from the atmosphere. Scientists have even been consulted, but they also don't know the reason for this phenomenon. People use high-frequency microphones and amplifiers to record the hum. Almost everywhere, they detect a low-frequency vibration that is practically impossible for the human ear to catch. It mixes with the sound of cars, printers in the office, and subway trains. Sometimes people stop hearing it, but the hum increases when they lie in bed. Many records about the hum say that people hear it in industrial cities. Sometimes these sound seekers manage to find the source. They ended up being factories with running generators where the sound was getting into the ventilation system and where the fans spread it outside the building. When the generator stopped working, the sound disappeared. But these are rare cases. More often, no one can find the source of hum. One of the most famous places where you can catch it is in the city of Taos in New Mexico. About 2% of locals hear a strange buzzing every day. Some tourists experience it too. Scientists came to the city to study this mystery, but found no explanation. Some theories say the usual acoustics of this place cause the hum. Some folks think it's just a hallucination or the power of suggestion. Everyone talks so much about the hum that the brain creates an illusion of a sound that doesn't exist. Locals believe the nature of the buzzing is mystical and associated with bad spirits. Whatever it is, no one has found out the truth yet. The hum that people hear all over the world may be the result of seismic activity in the tectonic plates under the ocean waters. Huge chunks of the Earth's crust are slowly moving and colliding with each other. This creates a noise that reaches us in the form of a hum. But why do only a few people hear it? Perhaps about 4% of the world's population has a unique sense of hearing. In any case, scientists haven't been able to confirm the tectonic plate theory either. Some researchers point to submarines as the reason. They use low-frequency radio signals to communicate around the world. These signals spread over the surface and can affect the human body. When the ear catches these sound waves, it reacts and causes vibrations similar to humming. This happens because low-frequency sound energy collides with the soft tissues of the skull and stimulates the auditory nerve. In fact, it's not even a sound. It's a hallucination that is created by your brain. But still, no one can confirm this theory either. Perhaps thunderstorms can create the hum phenomenon. About 8 million lightning strikes hit the Earth every day. Some impact creates a powerful electromagnetic charge. Lightning penetrates the air and makes it resonate between the Earth's surface and the ionosphere. Yeah, it sounds complicated, but the principle is simple. Imagine that you're blowing onto the neck of a bottle. Hear this low hum? Lightning works similarly with air. And that's just one hit. Imagine millions of these strikes. The sound waves spread all over the planet, and some people hear them. Lightning constantly strikes all the time, so the hum never stops. In 1973, scientists put forward a theory that the reason for the hum is the jet stream shearing against slower-moving air. In simple words, wind and fast airflows intersect slower ones. As a result, a whistling sound appears, and electric towers and power lines amplify it. By the way, the first reports of the hum appeared in the 70s. People learned about this phenomenon from the small British city of Bristol. Dozens of residents heard this strange noise in different parts of the town. In the beginning, they ignored it. Then the sound became increasingly more irritable. It prevented people from working and living their everyday lives. They couldn't sleep and couldn't concentrate on anything. There was a warehouse with industrial fans in a neighboring town. The locals were sure that this was the reason for the hum. The warehouse stopped working a few years later, but the sound remained. You may even be able to hear it right now if you visit the city. There are many theories about the hum, but you can reduce almost half of them thanks to one factor. Tectonic plates, seismic activity, lightning strikes, the Earth's crust, and resonating air are logical explanations. But look at all the records about the noise. People hadn't mentioned this until the 70s. If this phenomenon had appeared earlier, many newspapers would have written about it. Apparently, the hum is not a mystery of nature. Perhaps this is a consequence of all of our technological achievements. Factories, power lines, airplanes, cars, ships, trains, microwaves, and generators create an imperceptible background noise that most people ignore. We're so used to all these noises that we have forgotten what silence is. Perhaps our brain made the hum inside our heads to respond to our noisy world. If you start to listen carefully right now, what kind of sounds will you hear? Where are they coming from? And is there the hum among them?
In some regions of the Pacific Ocean, ships sink very easily, which is why it is feared by many sailors. Although there are many routes in that area, there are some that few dare to risk because crossing them can mean facing extremely dangerous forces of nature. If you need to travel from Asia to America by ship, the most obvious route would be the shortest and quickest. That is, a nearly straight line under the North Pacific Ocean. But instead, it might be better to avoid crossing this place and opt for longer and more expensive but much safer routes. There is not one, but several reasons. The Pacific is home to some of the most dangerous waters in the world. When we open a world map, we usually see that the Pacific Ocean is kinda divided, which prevents us from realizing how big it is. But in reality, this giant covers almost a third of Earth's surface. It's about 10 times larger than the smallest ocean in the world, the Arctic Ocean. In other words, when crossing it, the chances of being cut off from any landmass are very high. And in cases of emergencies, mechanical failures, or even storms, help might take days or even weeks to arrive. This significantly increases the risk of serious accidents, the possibility of cargo loss, and, in more serious cases, something even worse. Now think about it. A ship journey from Santos, Brazil to Cape Town, South Africa covers a little more than 3,400 miles. To get from Callao, Peru to Shanghai, China, you need to travel around 10,000 miles. Another major problem that prevents sailors from crossing the Pacific is storm systems, whose name already indicates what they contain: unpredictable and therefore dangerous storms. In addition, near the equator, there is a chain of winds called trade winds that directly influence the climate in the tropical region and occasionally cause rain. Trade winds are strong and constant winds that act like a whirlwind that rotates without stopping. And although they are extremely important for nature, as they spread moisture through forests and even influence the formation of deserts, they pose a problem. Their intensity changes depending on the season. In winter, for example, they can be much stronger. And since these winds are responsible for moving the ocean waters, they also create strong sea currents that could make the journey much more dangerous. In 2015, researchers came across a series of extremely strong winter trade winds that caused a surge of short but intense waves in the Pacific Ocean. They observed that those waves began to hit the ship with constant force, as if they were repeatedly punching it. As a result, the hull structure was completely twisted and deformed. And in the end, they confirmed what they had already known. Those waves, caused by winter trade winds, could be a real threat to vessels. And by the way, do you remember that help in the middle of the Pacific can take a considerable amount of time to arrive? So, now there is much more than one reason behind the hostility of the winds. Such a large ocean doesn't have many geographical barriers, such as mountains or large islands. It means that there are no land structures around it that could hold back or slow down the winds and currents. So the trade winds and ocean currents have complete freedom to gain strength and speed. This explains why the Pacific is the scene of powerful storms and giant waves. This is different, for example, from the North Atlantic, where North America, Europe, and Africa help to contain and redirect the atmospheric and maritime systems. It is now very common for scientists to see the bottom of the Pacific Ocean as a giant jigsaw puzzle because it's literally full of moving pieces. It's home to the largest number of tectonic plates on the planet, And one of them, the Pacific Plate, is the largest maritime plate that science has ever identified. This particularity makes the region extremely unstable to earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Even though the ocean may seem calm at first glance due to its geology, things can change very quickly. This makes it unpredictable and treacherous. For example, in 2022, the cargo ship One Apis was crossing the ocean, 1,600 miles northwest of Hawaii, when it was caught in a torrential storm. As a result, more than 1,800 containers were damaged, falling to the bottom of the sea. Hundreds more collapsed on the deck, turning into a real-life steel domino due to the force of the wind. The captain managed to steer the ship to Japan. The journey lasted about a week, and it was only when they got there that they understood the extent of the loss. But it wasn't just the One Apis. The following year, the ship Maersk Essen lost about 750 containers, while the Maersk Eindhoven lost more than 260. In both cases, the routes were bound for Asia. These three alone have already accounted for much more than the global annual average of containers lost at sea, which is about 1,382 per year. And the most curious thing is that these events happened in winter. Speaking of winter, it was in the winter of 2020 that the Pacific made history. Scientists recorded a 58-foot-high wave in the ocean, which is equivalent to the height of a 5 or even 6-story building. In general, a wave is considered giant or extreme when it's more than twice the height of the others around it. This one, however, was almost 3 times bigger than the rest. Now, it's important to remember that despite being rare and scary, these waves are not a tsunami, as they're caused by wind. Tsunamis, on the other hand, usually occur after underwater earthquakes or volcanic eruptions. Another big monster of the Pacific are typhoons, and the 2024 typhoon season confirmed this. One of the highlights was Hurricane Christy. It did not touch the crust, meaning it did not cause direct damage, but we cannot underestimate it. Christy reached Category 5 on the Saffir-Simpson scale, which is the maximum level. A hurricane of this degree is considered catastrophic, so it's no wonder that it was powerful enough to generate huge waves and extremely dangerous rip currents. In addition to this, there was also Super Typhoon Yagi, which hit the Asian continent with such force that it gained the reputation of the most powerful in the last 70 years. When it arrived in Vietnam, it caused around $1.6 billion in damage, destroyed infrastructure in several cities, and left a trail of victims wherever it went. As if that weren't enough, the Pacific is also home to one of the most unstable regions on the planet, the famous Pacific Ring of Fire. It's a huge, crack-shaped area that's home to intense volcanic and seismic activity. It's the most tectonically active place in the world, as the plates of the Earth's crust are constantly moving there. They move apart and collide, or grind against each other, which causes the region to experience earthquakes and volcanic eruptions all the time. Seismographs record some type of tremor there every 5 minutes. This dangerous region is responsible for about 90% of the planet's earthquakes. So, 9 out of 10 tremors occur within this ring, which stretches across the northern Pacific. And the worst part is that it doesn't just affect North America or Asia. In 2023, tremors linked to the Ring of Fire were felt in several Latin American countries, such as Argentina, Chile, Ecuador, and Peru. There was a trail of destruction, and the lives of around 15 people were lost. There's no shortage of reasons for ships to avoid the shortest route across the Pacific and opt for longer routes. As the popular saying goes, prevention is better than cure.
The floor is lava. Haha, just kidding. But honestly, it's kind of falling apart. You might not feel it yet, but a huge part of North America has already lost 37 miles worth of rock from its foundation. And no, this isn't about earthquakes or giant sinkholes. It's about the continent losing pieces of the very thing that keeps the ground from wobbling around like a bad carnival ride. A team of researchers has just dropped a geological bombshell. Part of North America's ground is thinning out like a very sad, very slow ice cream drip. How do they know? They basically gave Earth a high-tech full-body MRI and created 3D maps showing how rocks once considered indestructible are now melting away into the planet's guts, like an upside-down cheese pizza inside an oven. But to really understand this mess, you first have to meet my old friends, cratons. Cratons are like the roots of the continents. They're thick, tough, and ancient. We're talking billions of years old. These bad boys survived meteor impacts, supervolcanoes, and even the tectonic movement of plates. If the plates got into fistfights, for example, you can bet we would see mountain ranges being born. If they got a divorce, drifting apart from each other, then a whole new ocean would be born. All of these things leave scars on the surface of Earth, but the cratons seem to always remain unfazed, like the cockroaches of geology. And since a craton can basically get punched in the face and feel nothing, scientists always assumed these things were nearly indestructible. But then, a group of researchers took their fancy machines to the test and realized that, wait, the cratons are falling apart? How? Enter the Farallon Plate, a really ancient tectonic plate that started to slide under North America's major plate over 100 million years ago. This is a pretty normal process, actually. It's called subduction, and it's how Earth recycles rocks and keeps itself from overheating. This subduction thing has been happening for so long that, by now, the Farallon is almost 400 miles away from the craton, sitting pretty chill at the lower mantle, weirdly close to the outer core of our planet. But the Farallon has been causing trouble, like that one roommate who moved out but keeps leaving weird stuff in the fridge. You see, as it sinks, it tugs on the bottom of North America's foundation, stretching it out and causing pieces to fall off into the deep mantle. And if that wasn't enough drama, the sinking Farallon has also leaked water and carbon dioxide into the surrounding rocks, making the craton even softer and easier to shred apart. Thanks, Farallon. Very cool of you. By studying hundreds of earthquakes across thousands of monitoring stations, scientists have confirmed the story. Big chunks of continental material are dripping downward, thinning the craton by as much as 37 miles. That's more missing rocks than can fit into a milk carton. Sounds dramatic, right? But don't worry. This is happening at a snail's pace. It'll take millions of years for anything noticeable to happen. Your great-great-great-great few grandkids from the distant future might still be standing on solid ground. But don't get too comfy. This thing may not be an urgent problem, but there's another type of sinking that's happening faster than you can say, "Help!" Here's the thing. By 2050, at least 32 major cities in the US, including New York, Baltimore, and Charleston, could be partially underwater. And guess what? This one is mostly our fault. Scientists noticed that since 2007, some cities have been sinking into the ground between 0.04 and 0.08 inches every year. Charleston, in South Carolina, is pulling ahead in the worst way possible, sinking 0.15 inches annually. Sure, these numbers sound tiny and a bit ridiculous, but Charleston is barely 9 feet above sea level. And a little sinking goes a long way when the ocean is breathing down your neck. On really bad flood days, people there have to abandon their cars and basically swim home. This whole phenomenon is called land subsidence. And when you mix sinking land with rising sea levels, you get a disaster cocktail of flooded streets, salty farmland, ghost forests, and a lot of very cranky homeowners. And it doesn't stop with just homes. Infrastructure like bridges, roads, airports, and power plants, all things we rely on daily, are also at risk of serious damage. Flooded electrical grids and sunken highways could cause billions more in economic losses and create major safety hazards for communities. Now, let's be fair. Not everything is humanity's fault. Some of this trouble dates all the way back to the Ice Age.
About 12,000 years ago, massive ice sheets covered the northern US. They were heavy, like seriously heavy. The weight pushed the land down, and when the ice melted, the ground didn't just pop back up like a trampoline. Instead, it started playing a weird game of geological seesaw. The places that were squished started rising, and the places that weren't got pulled down. This whole process, called glacial isostatic adjustment, try to say that 3 times fast. But of course, humans found a way to make it worse. Groundwater extraction is a major culprit. Think of it like pulling the stuff out of the mattress. After a while, the whole thing just sags. In places like California's Central Valley, the land is dropping by up to 8 inches a year because we keep pumping out water during droughts. In cities like New York, the problem isn't just water. Skyscrapers themselves are making it worse. Yep, turns out if you stack millions of tons of concrete and steel onto soft ground, it tends to flatten. And in case you're wondering, the total mass of New York City's buildings is around 1.68 trillion pounds. That's about the same as 3.5 million statues of liberty piled up. With so much weight concentrated over a relatively small area, the underlying soils have no choice but to compress over time. And if you thought it couldn't get messier, think again. We've been building dams, which stop rivers from delivering fresh sediment to coastal areas. That sediment is kind of like Mother Nature's way of fluffing the ground back up. Without it, coastal lands are compacting like an old sponge. Plus, when wetlands are drained for agriculture or construction, the peaty soil dries out and collapses. Honestly, it's like the ground just can't catch a break. Scientists also noticed that the areas that used to be lush wetlands are now among the fastest sinking spots in the country, especially along the Gulf Coast. Louisiana, for example, is losing about a football field of land because of this mix of subsidence and rising seas. So what's the end game here for us regular people who just want to live above sea level? Well, it's not looking great. Ghost forests, which are basically drowned woodlands, are popping up. Farmland is turning salty and unusable. And even sunny day flooding, where streets flood without any rain, is becoming a thing. Yikes! Meanwhile, over on the West Coast, California is not exactly winning either. San Francisco and Los Angeles are both sinking, which means that rising sea levels could hit them twice as hard and twice as fast. In some places like the Palos Verdes Peninsula, the ground has been sinking so fast, people over there might as well live like moles. So, is America turning into the next Atlantis? Probably not next week, but without serious action, like cutting back on groundwater pumping and planning smarter cities, at least 500,000 people are in serious danger. And the housing damage could easily rack up a jaw-dropping $109 billion by 2050. In the end, while North America isn't about to sink like a poorly made souffle, it's definitely showing some cracks in the crust. So maybe let's ease up on groundwater pumping, rethink how and where we build, and invest a little more in keeping our feet dry. After all, if the floor really does become lava someday, we're gonna wish we had at least fixed the leaks first.
Well, this eerie Lake Huron discovery may be that it possibly contains the remnants of an entire civilization. Whoa, wait, sounds like Atlantis, right? Well, not exactly. But if there really had been an ancient underwater civilization here, it must have been a pretty advanced one. Around 10,000 years ago, 2 sharp glassy flakes broke off a stone tool and landed on the ground unnoticed. They stayed buried there for thousands of years, until 2013. Then scientists pulled up a small chunk of mud, about the size of a milk carton, from the bottom of Lake Huron, 100 feet underwater. Inside the mud, they found those same 2 flakes made of obsidian, a shiny black volcanic glass that forms when lava cools quickly. After careful testing, they realized these flakes came from Central Oregon, which is quite a distance, about 2,500 miles away. They found this prehistoric Great Lakes site on the Alpena Amberley Ridge, an underwater landform that once connected what's now Michigan and Ontario. Back then, it was dry land. Early humans used it to build traps for animals like caribou as the Ice Age faded and the Great Lakes began to form. Now, obsidian was the high-tech material of ancient times. It's super sharp and perfect for making tools. If you study the flakes carefully, it's obvious that humans made them. You can see where they struck them and the feathered edges that come from being carefully chipped. That means people were not only crafting tools here, but they also had access to obsidian that came from incredibly far away. It was likely possible through a huge trade network that spanned across the continent. For over 100 years, people have guessed that ancient societies might have existed beneath the Great Lakes, but no one had proof. That's why work on this submerged archaeological site is so important. A team of researchers has been trying to learn more about the 10,000-year-old ruins and the civilization that left them behind for over a decade now. Lake Huron's icy water acted like a time capsule that helped preserve things for thousands of years. So far, researchers have found not only unique stone tools, but also ancient trees with roots still intact and underwater peat bogs that preserved seeds and leaves. It was like an Ice Age version of Pompeii, a scene frozen in time. These discoveries are also helping scientists create new technologies and ways to do underwater archaeology. They've engaged sonars, underwater robots, and divers so far. Now, it's pretty cool that the tools they found on the Alpena Amberley Ridge were way smaller than other tools from the same era found nearby. That might mean a different group of people lived here, and they had their own unique way of life. Even the peat bogs they found, which are about 9,500 years old, hold secrets. They're full of pine needles, seeds, and leaves that could reveal what the environment was like back then. Usually stuff like this breaks down quickly on land, but the cold freshwater preserved it. The Michigan team is working with scientists in Cambridge, England, to extract DNA from the remains. If it works, it could finally confirm what animals lived there, and maybe even more. There are still years of discovery on this prehistoric Great Lakes site ahead. Another famous submerged archaeological site is the lost city of Pavlo-Petri. Archaeologists think it is the oldest sunken city in the world they've found and made official so far. Pavlo-Petri is around 5,000 years old. That means it existed even before the legendary Greek heroes in Homer's stories. Scientists first spotted it way back in 1904, and then mostly forgot about it until 1967, when Nicholas Fleming rediscovered it. He described it as a Bronze Age city now lying under about 10 to 13 feet of water. A year later, he returned with a team of scientists to study the ruins. Over 6 weeks, using just hand tapes and a basic grid, they managed to map out the city. They found that it covered almost 1,000 feet by 500 feet and had at least 15 buildings, courtyards, 5 streets, 2 tombs, and around 37 small stone graves. They also found signs that the ruins continued onto the nearby island of Pavlo-Petri itself. They dug up some amazing pottery, obsidian, and chert blades, and even a tiny bronze figurine that may date all the way back to 2800 BCE. Most of the buildings, though, came from the period between 1650 and 1180 BCE. Then scientists left the site alone again until 2009, when a super team of researchers launched a new 5-year project to really dive deep into the history of Pavlo-Petri. This time, they had digital mapping tools and better diving equipment, so they could explore and even excavate underwater. They found another 97,000 square feet of buildings, including a large hall and hidden streets. Plus, they dug up even more pottery that showed people had been living in the city from about 3000 BCE to 1100 BCE, and that the city once had a population of 500 to 2,000 people. No one knows for sure how the city ended up underwater, but many scientists think it was because of an earthquake, maybe around 1000 BCE, or even as late as 375 CE. Because it's the oldest underwater city ever found, some people even believe Pavlo-Petri might have inspired the legend of Atlantis. Another contestant for the Atlantis title lies near Japan. Back in 1986, a local diver was exploring the waters near the Ryukyu Islands when he found a giant structure made of perfectly shaped steps and sharp edges. It was 82 feet underwater. Today, the Yonaguni Monument is one of the most mysterious underwater sites on the planet. The structure is nearly half a football field in size. It looks like a massive stone pyramid with layers of platforms and steps stacked one on top of another. No one really knows where it came from or who built it. Some experts think the monument might be more than 10,000 years old, which would make it older than the Egyptian pyramids. One theory is that it could be the last remains of a lost civilization called Mu, a mythical Pacific society kind of like Atlantis. Others believe an ancient culture that lived in Japan as early as 12,000 BCE might have built it. But many scientists and geologists are skeptical about this possible underwater ancient civilization, even though Yonaguni has narrow passageways, arched openings, and right angles that almost look like city blocks. They say that the site looks a lot like natural rock formations, like the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland, for example. The whole monument is still connected to a bigger chunk of bedrock, which means it wasn't built piece by piece. And the way the layers of rock are stacked probably has more to do with earthquakes and tectonic movement. It's located in the very active Pacific Ring of Fire. One marine geologist kept going back down there, and every time he found something new. He says he spotted tool marks in the rock, symbols carved into stone faces, and even rock formations shaped like animals. He believes these carvings point to a culture that came from mainland Asia. He said he had identified 10 different structures off Yonaguni, including a ruined castle, a triumphal arch, 5 temples, and even a huge museum. These buildings seem to be connected by roads and channels, and some parts are surrounded by what could be giant stone walls. The explorer believes the city is at least 5,000 years old, based on stalactites found in underwater caves nearby, which would have only formed after the caves flooded. His supporters say they have never seen an earthquake create shapes like this, above or below water. But skeptics blame it all on erosion and insist that whirling underwater currents and sea creatures left holes in the rock. Now, if you want to form your own opinion about it, the spot is open for visitors, and it's definitely a super fun diving experience.